This is a hard video to make, so let me start with the truth. You don't heal from generational trauma by pretending it isn't there. You don't fix broken families by ignoring the silence in the room. And you don't build a strong future by walking away from your past. My name's Jesse. I've been a husband and father for over 20 years. I'm retired and infantry paratrooper. Spent years of my life in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. Boots on the ground, rifle in hand, watching young men face life and death day after day. I've buried brothers, I've carried others off the battlefield, and when I came home I thought the war was over. But I realized real quick, war doesn't end just because you come back. War follows you. It lives in your nervous system. It rewrites your brain. It changes how you see threats, how you react to sudden sounds, how you sleep or don't sleep. And some of the deepest wars we fight, they aren't overseas. They're right here in our families, in our bloodlines, and in our communities. Here's what they don't tell you about war trauma. It doesn't stay contained in the veteran. When you come home hypervigilant, when you explode over small things, when you can't connect emotionally because you've shut down to survive, when you self-medicate with alcohol or isolation, that trauma spreads. Your wife walks on eggshells. Your kids learn that daddy's moods are unpredictable and dangerous. They internalize that fear, that tension, that emotional chaos. They learn that love comes with conditions, that safety is temporary, that people who are supposed to protect you may also be the ones who hurt you. That's how war trauma becomes generational trauma. That's how all trauma becomes generational trauma. Not through genetics, but through patterns, through learned behaviors, through nervous systems that stay locked in survival mode and teach the next generation to do the same. When we don't deal with our trauma properly, when we don't finally find healthy outlets for our rage, for our grief, for our guilt, we don't learn to regulate our emotions and clear our minds so we can make rational decisions instead of reactive ones, we pass this down like a poisoned inheritance. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it in the families of my brothers and sisters who didn't make it home. I've seen it in the divorce rates, the addiction rates, the suicide rates that affect men disproportionately compared to women. I've seen it following veterans around like a shadow. War doesn't end when we come home. It just changes battlefields. And like I said, I've been a husband and father for over 2 decades. I also run a Jiu-Jitsu academy up here in Alaska with my friends. And this academy is more than a business to me. It's more than just a gym. It's a lifeline. It's a place where men, women, and kids come not just to learn how to choke or escape a fight, but to heal, to belong, to find community in a world that is designed to keep us divided. It's where we learn to regulate our nervous systems, channel our aggression, constructively, not destructively, and to develop mental clarity that comes from facing adversity with a calm mind. So let me ask you something. How many of you carry wounds that were never yours to begin with? How many of you grew up with an absent father, an addicted mother, a broken system that left you on your own? How many of you have lost people, like I did, because they didn't get the help they needed? They didn't have the community they deserved and needed. The outlets they needed to process their pain in healthy ways, they just didn't exist. See, this isn't just a story about me. This is about all of us. It's a story about what happens when trauma goes untreated, when communities fracture, when people lose the ability to make clear-headed decisions because their minds are clouded by unprocessed pain. Let me tell you a little about my family. My mother's mother, my grandmother, she was a mixed Native woman, Texas, and she struggled with alcoholism. But that struggle didn't happen in a vacuum. She lived through basically cultural genocide. Because she was half white, she was sent to boarding schools designed to kill the Indian and save the man. So she drank. And that drinking wasn't just her personal failing. It was a symptom of trauma and nowhere else to go. That struggle didn't just affect her, it consumed her entire family. She left her kids behind. My mom and her brothers grew up without their mother. I didn't meet her till I was 11 years old. She came home and she was dying of cancer. We got to take care of her until she passed. My mother and her brothers were raised with my grandfather, but he can't replace the wound of being abandoned by your mom. And that scar doesn't just heal with time. It shapes how you love, how you see, how you trust, how you parent. That scar stays forever unless you've actively worked to heal it. My Uncle Walton, the youngest, he probably carried it the hardest from what I can tell. He never learned healthy ways to cope with his abandonment, his rage, the deep shame that comes from feeling unwanted. He never found community that could hold him through his darkest moments. He never learned discipline and emotional regulation that might have saved him. He didn't make it. He ended up trying to get his life together sometime last year, about a decade older than me. And he paid for a driving school here in Alaska. He'd just gotten out of prison. He was purposely living homeless here in Anchorage, waiting for school to start. He was saving his money. And then last August, he was beat into a coma, and he later died. That wasn't random. It wasn't just bad luck. That was generational trauma running its course. That was the echo of pain passing down and landing on him, and it cost him his life. But not before passing it on and passing that abuse on to my cousins. And Curtis and Megan, if you're listening to this, I know we don't talk much, and life comes hard and it goes fast. But I love you, and I'm sorry for the trauma you undoubtedly carry. Now let me tell you about my father. We don't talk, and he's still a raging alcoholic as far as I know, and he refuses to accept his role. And my mom, him leaving due to the physical abuse. But I remember the lumps on my mom's head. I remember when we left and walked down that dark gravel road in the middle of the night with the bright moonlight, crying, not understanding why we were leaving, right? And his biological father, who was an Italian immigrant in the Air Force, stationed in England, started dating a young English girl. Then he got her pregnant. And then he went home to his wife in America, leaving my grandmother to bear the burden of having a child out of wedlock in England. And then that burden passed on to my father by being unwanted. He tried to find his father one time, never found him. So he drank, and he still drinks, and he's still trying to numb that pain. And you can't make good decisions, and you can't regulate your emotions. You can't be the father kids need to be if you have to deal with that. He wasn't around much when I was a kid. My parents split when I was about 7, like I said. And I got to visit him once, not long after that, when I was about 9 on a weekend. And he, I don't even remember what I did to slight him, but he beat me from head to toe with the frayed edges of a leather belt that left bleeding wounds from my ankles to my neck. And I begged my mom not to call the cops on him. I didn't see him for 3 years after that. But I still carry his rage from that. I still carry the rage from the sight of my mother with lumps on her head. And I know that he hurt her, and I was angry, and I couldn't do anything to protect her. My mom had to raise 2 boys by herself. She started working jobs that most men won't even do today. She ended up doing roofing until it broke her back to put food on the table and buy a house. And when it finally gave out, when she went to the doctors for help, you know what they said? They accused her of drug-seeking behavior. They dismissed her. They told her she just wanted pills. They let her injury fester into her spine. She's now hunched, and I love her to death. She's now hunched and has permanent injury from this. Her vertebrae are sticking out like a cruel reminder of how the system treats poor working women. And she's still being denied disability to this day, by the way, and she can't work, just to clarify. And now she lives with that permanent damage that surgery can't even fix. And that's generational trauma, too. It's not just about broken families. It's about a system designed to break the strong and blame them for being broken. It's about trauma that gets passed down, not just through families, but through poverty, through discrimination, through medical neglect, through institutions that see poor people and people of color as disposable. Hell, the 3rd leading cause of death in this country is medical malpractice. So I carry the weight of all that. My grandmother's culture of destruction, my father's untreated trauma from being unwanted, my mother's suffering, my uncle's death, the poverty, the addiction, the violence, the systems that have failed us all. And if I don't face it, if I don't find healthy ways to process it, if I don't develop the emotional regulation and mental clarity I need to break these patterns, then I pass it on to my children, and that's unacceptable. My children are young adults now, and I pray that they never, ever have an inkling of carrying this. Now let me tell you about a book I read a few years ago when I was graduating college as an outdoor studies major here in Alaska. It's written by Harold Napoleon. It's called Yuuyaraq, The Way of the Human Being. He wrote it while he was incarcerated. In the book, he described what happened to Alaska Native peoples after the epidemic of colonization, cultural destruction, swept through their villages. He called it the Great Death, and that's what it's known as around here. Entire communities lost not just people, but their identity, their traditions, their sense of self, and healthy ways of dealing with conflict and trauma. What was left is trauma that's still carried on by generations of people who have lost all their traditions and still processing that grief of handling conflict, raising children, of being human in a community with each other. When I read that, I saw my family in those pages. I saw my grandmother's alcoholism, my uncle's death, my father's absence, my mother's broken spine. When I read that book by Harold Napoleon, and he identified, it's basically the oldest identification of generational trauma that I've read. And it made me understand. It brought clarity to some things that had kept me in darkness. And it showed me that unless we name it, unless we face it, unless we actively create new patterns to replace these broken ones, it will keep devouring our families. But Napoleon didn't just write that book, and I'm not going to ruin it for you. I think you should read it, but it's very touching. He wrote it to show that healing is possible. Healing comes when we return to being a human being again. We stop isolating ourselves and start living for each other again. We build communities that hold us together instead of tearing us apart. When we learn to regulate our emotions in healthy ways, we develop practices that keep our minds clear so we can make good decisions instead of reactive ones. That's why that book was so touching to me. I'm not saying that I'm a huge fan of this person or the book and the way he went about and how he got in jail, but I am a fan of that book. And that's also what I found in Jiu-Jitsu. That's what I found in community, because you don't train alone. You don't heal alone. You can't fake who you are on the mats. You either show up or you don't. You put in the work or get exposed. And in that honesty and in that struggle in Jiu-Jitsu and that sweat, you start to heal, and you heal together. But let me be specific about how Jiu-Jitsu heals my trauma, because it's not magic. It's science. When you're dealing with trauma, when your nervous system is stuck in survival mode, when your fight or flight response is constantly activated, your brain can't distinguish between past threats, present safety. You're hypervigilant, reactive, unable to think clearly because you're always scanning for danger. Jiu-Jitsu directly addresses this. When you're grappling, you are literally in a controlled fight or flight situation. Your heart rate will spike. Your adrenaline floods. But here's the key. You're doing it in a safe environment with people who care about you, under rules that protect everyone. You're learning to stay calm under pressure. You're learning to think strategically. When your body wants to panic, your mind wants to quit, you want to be anywhere but here. You're training your nervous system to self-regulate. Every time you get submitted, every time you tap, you're learning that you can survive defeat and come back stronger. Every time you successfully defend or escape, you're building confidence in your ability to handle adversity. Every time you train with a partner, you're building trust. You're learning that physical contact doesn't have to always mean violence. It can just mean control. It can also mean learning. You're learning that strength can be used to protect, not just to hurt people. Then here's what's crucial for veterans like me, for people with trauma like me. You're learning to be present in your body again. Trauma disconnects us from our bodies. We disassociate. We numb out. We live in our heads, replaying past events and worrying about future threats. Jiu-Jitsu forces you back into your body. Your soul literally back into your body. You have to feel what's happening right now. You have to respond to what's actually in front of you, not what's behind you, not what's in your imagination, and not what your traumatized brain is imagining for you. And I've seen it happen over and over again in the academy. A kid comes in with chaos at home, finds structure, discipline, positive male role models. Not the kind of rigid, fear-based discipline that breaks people, right? Let me go ahead and try to heal trauma with trauma. That's smart. But I see that also. But showing up consistently, respecting your training partner, controlling your emotions under pressure, pushing through when you want to quit. I've watched fathers who never knew how to connect with their sons learn to do it through training together. You watch them come in both as beginners, both vulnerable, both willing to frickin' take that leap together. Father learning he can't rely on his authority. He has to earn that respect and effort through humility with his son together. I've watched that, and those relationships are magical. And you learn that losing isn't about losing. It's about how you handle losing. I've watched veterans, broken, lost, carrying war inside their chest, find brotherhood again. Not the fake kind of brotherhood that's all talk and no substance in a Facebook group, right? But the real kind that's forged through a shared struggle. When you've been choked unconscious by someone and didn't help each other get better because you refused to tap. You form bonds that can't be broken. You find a tribe again, a unit again, a reason to live again. And that is the way of the human being. That healing happening in real time, on the mats, in community. And let me draw a parallel here from my military career. In the Army, we had a saying, you fight how you train. When you're in a firefight, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. And that training wasn't done alone. It's always done in squads, platoons, companies. You live together, you eat together, you train together, you bleed together. And we weren't just individuals, you're a unit. We looked out for each other. We held each other accountable. Made sure everyone came home. But here's what happens when you get home. Suddenly that unit's gone. It's dissolved. Suddenly we're on our own. No more shared missions. No more built-in communities. No more structure. No more brothers watching our backs. And that isolation is deadly. no matter where you're coming from. That's where the real casualties happen. Not on the battlefield, but in the silence of civilian life, where no one understands what you have been through. And that's exactly what Jiu-Jitsu can recreate for a lot of people, or create for a lot of people. It recreates what our broken communities need. It's training for life in a unit. On the mats, you learn to fight, but you also learn to trust. You learn humility. You learn to rely on each other. You learn no matter how tough you think you are, you can't do it alone, and there's always someone tougher. And that cardio will make cowards of us all, right? If you fatigue makes cowards of us all. If you get tired, you will learn really quickly, right? When trauma hits a family, it scatters people. Everyone deals with it differently. Some people get angry. Some people get depressed. Some people shut out the world. Some people run away and completely abandon their families. Some people try to control everything. Some people self-medicate. But what everyone loses is the ability to communicate, the ability to trust, to work together towards healing and building better communities and stronger families. They lose that ability. And Jiu-Jitsu brings that together. Not through talking about feelings. Yes, that's like part of it after class especially. But through shared experience, physical experience, trusting each other with your safety, through celebrating each other's victories, giving support to each other's defeats. They're showing up consistently, even when you don't want to, because your team needs you, your teammate needs you. They need training partners, even when you don't want to train. You learn this. I've watched broken families start to heal on my mats. I've watched fathers, sons, and daughters who couldn't talk to each other find common ground through training. I've watched mothers gain confidence to leave abusive relationships because they learned they were stronger than they thought. I've watched kids from chaotic homes find a stability and mentorship they weren't getting anywhere else because everybody's still processing some kind of trauma. But it's not just the physical training that heals, it's the mental discipline. Jiu-Jitsu teaches you to stay calm under pressure. It teaches you to think several moves ahead. It teaches you to adapt when your plan doesn't work. It teaches you that there's always another option, always another way to escape or attack. These aren't just useful skills for fighting. They are life skills. You can apply them to everything. They're the exact opposite of the trauma response that keeps people stuck in reactive patterns. When someone grows up in chaos, they often develop one of two responses. They either become hyper-controlling, trying to manage every detail to prevent bad things from happening, or they become completely passive, believing they have no power to change any situation and that they're just victims of their circumstances. And both responses come from the same place. A nervous system that hasn't learned how to regulate itself. A mind that hasn't learned how to be calm and think clearly under pressure. And Jiu-Jitsu teaches the third way, calm responsiveness, to learn to assess the situation accurately. You learn to stay relaxed while under attack. You learn to use your opponent's energy against them instead of fighting force with force. You learn that sometimes the best response is to escape. Sometimes it's to defend, and sometimes it's to attack back. And the key is having the mental clarity to choose the right path, the right response for your situations. That is the true key. And this is exactly what people from traumatic backgrounds need to learn. They need to learn that they have options. They need to learn that they can think clearly even in stressful situations. They need to learn that they can trust their judgment. They need to learn that they too can protect others and protect themselves and the people they love without becoming the thing that hurt them. When I step on these mats, when I'm coaching, I'm not just teaching techniques. I'm teaching survival. I'm teaching resilience. I'm teaching kids and adults how to face the war that they're already in. The war of trauma, of family wounds, the war of a broken system. And win. I'm teaching them how to win. I'm teaching them that they don't have to repeat their patterns that destroyed their parents and their grandparents. I'm showing them that healing is possible, that community is possible, that breaking the cycle is possible. Not just some word that people say, but I'm living that and I'm showing that. I'm providing examples of that. Because listen to me, the system doesn't want us healed. Broken people are easier to control, broken people are easier to sell to, and broken people don't organize, they don't vote, they don't demand better. Right? Broken people consume products and services to numb their pain instead of addressing the root causes. Broken people are easier to divide against each other, against other communities, against their own best interests. But strong people, healed people, people within the community, that's dangerous to the status quo. And that is powerful. That's unstoppable. People who have processed their trauma, who have developed emotional regulation, who have built real relationships with others, They cannot be manipulated. They cannot be bought. They make better decisions. They demand better treatment, and they create better communities. They raise healthier children. They become leaders. That's all I got. I've been babbling long enough now. I think you understand the point. I bared my soul here. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me how you're dealing with your traumas. If this video helped you, please let me know, because that will really help me. If you made it this far, thank you. I babble a lot. I'm Jesse Jiu-Jitsu, retired infantry paratrooper, multiple combat deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. I'm a husband and father of over 2 decades. I'm a BJJ black belt, and I run an academy up here in Alaska with my friends, trying to build a better world for my grandchildren. And I'm a free man.